And today I want to talk about day and time. I know we've probably spoken with Benika and maybe Mama Shelley a little bit about this, but yeah, I figured it's something that I haven't put out on the channel, and it's a big awakening because a lot of people in Africa, or who at least speak the dialects in Africa or the tribes in Africa, they will relate to a lot of what we're going to discuss today. And it is like natural to them, the issues we're going to discuss today. We're not even teaching them anything new. We're just making them realize who they are and what they have, that came from Zambi or Tatan Zambi, yes. All right, so we'll talk about Siku is day and Sa is time. And we're going to look at what the scriptures say about day and time. So in the book of Genesis, start out with Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. Of course, we know this is a story of creation. And Zambi say, let there be light. So on this first day, he's creating light. Then we see in verse 5 that I've highlighted in green over here, after he has created the light and he has divided it from the darkness, he says, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So two components, the evening and the morning, made up the first day. Then we go to verse 6 over there. And now he's creating the firmament, which is the sky, and the sea. So the waters above and the waters below. And again, you look down at verse 8. After he's created all that, he says, and the evening and the morning. And now he calls it the second day. So we are seeing a repetition in what comprises a day. A day is comprised of an evening, what we call in today's terms, the night. And then it's composed of also the second half, which is daylight or day hours. Anyway, let's go to verse 9. Verse 9, he starts to create. He says, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place. And now he says, let the dry land appear. So he's creating the land. And I'll jump over. That was verse 9 down here. So I jump on that day, he's creating the land. And then on verse 13, he summarizes it and says, and the evening and the morning were the third day. One thing I know from reading the scriptures is when Tatan Zambi wants us to really get something, he repeats it. Because we're just like little children. How many times do I have to repeat to my own children to do something or not to do something? It's the same. So now for the third time, he's repeating to us the order of a day is evening and morning. Carrying on verse 14, something interesting is going to happen here. Zambi says, let there be lights, plural, in the sky or in the heavens. To divide, the purpose of the lights is to divide the day from the night. So in essence, he is dividing the evening and the morning. And he's going to use this lights that he's going to put up there. Okay? And let them be for signs, for seasons, for days and years. Interestingly, I didn't see the word weeks or months over there. Interestingly, if you pay attention to this verse that is talking about verse 14, he says, let there be lights. So what lights is he putting there? And we see, we know he put the moon, he put the sun, and even the stars. Okay? Because it says here in verse 16, and God and Zambi made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, which is the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So now the question becomes, when we're talking about time, can we use, number one, the moon to determine time? I don't think so. Can we use the sun to determine time? I believe so. And we'll get to that in a bit more detail. And can we use the stars in the heaven to tell time? I don't think so. At least not that I know of. Okay, maybe if there's a way, but not that I know of. So we'll get to that. That was, now he's doing this on the fourth day. And again, he repeats on verse 19, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Okay, so we know fourth day is to do with governance and things like that, or the number 4. So let's go to verse 20. He's going to create something for the fifth day. And he says, and Nzambi said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life. Right? So he's creating the creatures now. The birds that fly up in the sky and things like that. And he creates also the creatures that will move, every living creature and even the sea creatures. They're being told to be fruitful and multiply. And again, verse 23, evening and morning, the fifth day. I mean, Nzambi is like just laying it all out very simply, you know. This is how you count a day. You have an evening, and then you have daytime. Verse 24, he creates things on the sixth day. Now he creates the earth. He creates creatures on the earth. Let the earth bring forth the living creature after the living creatures after his kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth after his kind, and it was so. So that's in verse 24. And then in verse 26, it creates man. Let us make man in our image. And then he gives him dominion over the fish, the cattle that he has just created, and all those things. And you jump to verse 31. Again, he repeats what he has repeated for the 5 days before. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Okay. Let me point out something actually that I just forgot. Well, I'll come to it. So what have we seen so far? Evening and morning make up a day. Evening and morning make up a day. The day starts with the evening. The day ends after the daytime. That's pretty much the order that we've seen here. All right, now let's go ahead and welcome to everybody who's joined. We're talking about day and time today. Now let's go ahead and look at the seventh day. So now in verse 1 here, it says, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. That happened as of day 6. But now on the seventh day, Nzambi ended his work, which he had made, and he rested. He rested on the seventh day. So when it says the seventh day, he rested during the evening and the daytime, because that's what a whole day is. You know, it's like if you have a game like soccer, if you have a football match, you have a first half and you have a second half. When you have a day, the first half is the evening or the night. You have 12 hours. Then the second half is the daylight hours. And that makes it 24 hours. And this is why we're saying it is the sun that we use to tell time. When the sun sets, we know the evening or the night is beginning. You cannot look up to the sky and see a moon and say now it is nighttime. No, sometimes you look up in the sky during the middle of the day, you'll see a small moon, you know. So the moon doesn't tell us time, but the sun helps us tell time. So when the sun sets, the day starts. the next day starts. And now let's take a look at time. How do we tell time? That's the days. Plain, clear, Zambi showed us how to label the days. Now let's look at time. Before I actually get into time, let me give you a summary here for the days of the week. Sorry about that. So I hope we have other people, non-Kenyans, to also give us in the discussion how they number words or letters. So here for us in Swahili, the number one is moja, okay? But we have some communities, especially among the 9 Swahili communities in East Africa, or 9 tribes. We have some of them who use the word mosi, which is, I think, what is also used in Kikongo for number one. And day is Juma, okay? So when you combine moja, you say with Juma, you say Juma mosi, and that would be your fast day, okay? Goes with the numbers. Mbili is Swahili for 2, but we change it and we say Jumapili of the second day, or the second day. Tatu is 3, and so on and so forth. But look at this, interestingly, when you get to the 6th day here, the Arabs found a way to change what we called the 6th day. And they introduced an Arabic word. This Al-Hamisi is an Arabic word. And it is the Arabic word for the day of congregation. If you notice, this is when they go to the mosques, for example. At lunchtime on Fridays, Muslims usually have a time where they congregate in the mosque. So the Arab influence, especially when they were interacting with the locals in East Africa, they learned some Swahili words. They gave us some Arabic words. I believe this is when this happened, and we lost what I think would have been, not sure, but I think it would have been Juma Sita, based on how all this line up. And then for the 7th day, they did the same thing. They introduced another Arabic word instead of what would have been either Juma Saba or what I believe is actually Sabato. Sabato is actually the word for the 7th day, because you can see the word 7, the name for 7 is Saba. So remember, a day has 24 hours from sunset, when you have the evening, to the following sunset. So if you're saying Jumamosi, you're talking about Saturday evening, for example, like those in Southern Africa or those in Kenya right now. It's already like, almost 8 o'clock in Kenya, for example. So 8 p.m., what we call 8 p.m., right? But really, it's almost 2 or the second hour, 2 hours after sunset, because sunset was probably around 6 o'clock. So anyway, now let's look at time. That's on the days. Let's look at time, okay? Some people say a clock is always right 2 times a day. I think that's nonsense. I want to humbly submit that that is nonsense. We think it is correct 2 times a day because we are not using the sun. If I showed you, for example, this clock down here in my image, you would probably read it like most of us do and say it is 4:40, right? It is 4:40, but you cannot tell me whether it is 4:40 in the day or in the night. So when we say that it is right twice a day, we are subscribing to confusion. And Zambi is not a creator of confusion. He has order, right? And what order did he give us? He said, you have to look at the sun. If you told me this is what the clock says, if I told my son, go tell me what the clock says, and he's a little boy, he doesn't know how to read time, and he comes and tells me, this is where the hands are, I would look outside. If I see sunlight, then I will say it is 4:40 during the day, which would mean it's in the afternoon, what we call the afternoon. Or if it was early in the morning, I would say it's early in the morning, at 4:40, what we call after midnight. But that is an incorrect way of reading this. Take a look at this scripture here from the book of Matthew. This is a parable where Isaiah or Jesus has gone and given a parable about a guy who hired different workers at different times of the day and was going to pay them different amounts of money. But the point I want you to focus on is, let's look at verse 20 here. He went about the third hour and saw others standing in the idle marketplace. Then later on, again, he went about the 6th, the 9th, the 11th hour. Okay, let's say you look at this clock here, the one down here with an X, and you say, this man who owned a vineyard went about the third hour. If I look at this clock and I see the number third, I'm going to look at 3 here. Now, if it's 3 and it said morning, it doesn't make sense that this owner, this master, would go to hire laborers in his vineyard in the morning, in the third hour, which is what we call 3 a.m. This is why this clock is incorrect, even if we use it all around the world. If he went back again at the 6th hour, so he's going back at 6 a.m., and then at 9 a.m., the 9th hour, and then at 11 a.m., something doesn't add up there, especially that first one about the third hour. What is the correct way? Exactly how we read time in Africa. Here in Swahili, I'm showing you how we read time. So you start down here. You may have noticed by now the 6th and the 12th are interchanged from this. When the sun sets, that's called the 12th hour. So if this guy went to hire somebody at the third hour, either the sun sets or the sun rises here. He went in the morning. They're telling us what is happening with the sun. The morning is when you have the sun rise. So he went in the third hour here. In Africa, when we say saa tatu, tatu is the number for 3, it's what in the English language we refer to as 9 a.m. But it's really the third hour. The third hour. That makes sense because it's a third hour after sunrise. And then he went later on at the 6th hour, which would be midday, what we call midday. And then he went again at the 9th hour, which is like 3 p.m. So you look at the word, the number 9, and you read it like it is written, the 9th hour, or the 6th hour, or the 3rd hour. That's how we read time. If you ask somebody, I'm sure we might have some people on the call from Kenya, or even those who are in Africa elsewhere. I'd like to hear your thoughts and comments about this, but this is how we read time. In fact, I give credit to a lot of us from Africa because, whenever you're reading time, you're maybe using this clock, but you're speaking in this language. When it's, 9 a.m., what we call 9 a.m., you say it's 3 or the 3rd hour. And that is exactly how the scriptures relate. So when they say Christ was crucified in the third hour or the ninth hour, you have to look at the 3 or the 9 on the clock like this. All right. Here's another one. It's not a trick question. Same time that I was showing that first clock, it's about 4:40. But then if you ask somebody in Kenya, what time is it? They will say it's the 10th hour and 40 minutes, or there's 20 minutes before the 11th hour. In Swahili, we say saa kumi, kumi is 10, and then 40 minutes here, dakika arobaini. Or you say saa kumi na moja is kasoro, meaning shy. The 11th hour is shy by 20 minutes. So we've been speaking in the scriptural language. Question is, how did we get this language? How come it's always been there? It's because Zambi put it in us and it's been passed down in our languages. I can tell you, you're not going to find this type of reading of time outside of Africa. It is native to Africa.